There's a quiet kind of man you've probably met. He lives alone. No girlfriend, no wife. His apartment is clean, maybe a little too clean. He doesn't complain about it. In fact, he seems fine, almost too fine. So what's actually going on in his head? Today, we're breaking down the real psychology behind men who live alone. Not the stereotypes, not the memes, but what research and psychology actually say about solitude, avoidance, and choice. First, the most important distinction. Living alone is not the same as being lonely. Psychologists separate two things: objective isolation, which is just the physical fact of being alone, and subjective loneliness, which is the emotional experience of feeling disconnected. Plenty of men who live alone are deeply connected to friends, family, work, hobbies. They've simply chosen not to prioritize a romantic relationship right now. For them, solitude is a preference, not a wound. But for others, the apartment is quiet because the inside is quiet too, and that's where things get more interesting. One of the most common psychological threads here is attachment style, specifically avoidant attachment. Men with this pattern often learned early on, sometimes in childhood, sometimes through a painful relationship, that closeness comes with a cost. Vulnerability equals risk. So the nervous system adapts. Independence starts to feel safer than intimacy. This isn't a character flaw. It's a survival strategy that made sense at some point. The problem is, it can quietly calcify into identity. I just don't need anyone starts as a coping mechanism and ends as a personality trait. The tell is usually this: when a relationship does get close, something inside pulls the emergency brake, and the man retreats back to the safety of being alone, often without fully understanding why. Not every single man is avoidant, though. Some are simply selective. As men build a stable life, career, friendships, self-respect, the bar for who gets to share that life naturally rises. Psychologically, this is tied to something called self-concept clarity. The more clearly a person knows who they are, the less willing they are to compromise that identity just to avoid being alone. For these men, solitude isn't a wound to manage, it's a filter. They'd rather be alone than settle. And research on relationship satisfaction actually backs this up. People who enter relationships from a place of wholeness rather than lack tend to report healthier, more stable partnerships later. There's also a cultural layer here that can't be ignored. Many men are raised on an unspoken script. Don't need anyone, don't show weakness, handle it alone. That script can make solitude feel like proof of strength, even when, underneath, there's real craving for connection. This creates a strange internal contradiction. A man who says, "I'm totally fine on my own," while quietly feeling isolated, because admitting the loneliness itself feels like a violation of what he was taught masculinity is supposed to look like. This is part of why male loneliness is often invisible, not because it isn't there, but because it's been trained to stay silent. Now, it's not all cautionary tale. Psychology also shows real benefits to extended solitude, when it's chosen and not just defaulted into. Time alone gives space for self-reflection, deeper focus, and what psychologists call autonomy, the sense of directing your own life. Many men who live alone report stronger discipline, clearer goals, and a more defined sense of self, specifically because there's no one else's needs to constantly negotiate. The key variable isn't whether he's alone, it's whether the solitude is chosen and comfortable or defaulted into and avoided. Same living situation, completely different psychology. So, is the single man living alone a picture of quiet strength or quiet avoidance? Honestly, it depends on the man. Sometimes it's both at once. The apartment doesn't tell you the story.
What matters is whether he's alone because he's running from closeness or alone because he's genuinely at peace with himself. If this broke down something you've noticed in your own life or in someone you know, drop a comment and let me know which type resonated most. And if you want more videos unpacking the psychology behind everyday behavior, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.